Hello and welcome to the garden. Well, when I set out the tomatoes and peppers, it was just about as early as I could put them out, and probably it would have been better to wait a further week, but the plants were getting really big and the forecast changed as soon as I got these into the ground and we had a few cooler evenings. But what I didn't do at that time was plant out the cucumbers. Whilst all of these plants will be killed by a frost, I think the cucumbers are a little bit more twitchy. They're a bit more sensitive to cooler evenings. So the tomatoes and the peppers, they haven't suffered at all from being planted out. But I kept these cucumbers for another week or so in the propagators because I didn't want to give them any undue stress. But now they're looking pretty good, and I think nighttime temperatures are much better now and the forecast is looking fine. So I'm going to get these in the ground. Now, space is a little bit short here. I shouldn't really have put 4 tomatoes at this end, but I had the plants and I didn't want to waste them. So space is a little tight here, but I'm going to set 2 of these cucumbers side by side and run them straight up, and then assuming they get there, they can track down the ridge. Now, I only really need 1 for the crop, but I think it's always a good idea with cucumbers to have a spare. They're a little bit touchy. So these are in 1 litre pots. They look like reasonably healthy plants. They've got strong root systems. They look like they should have gone out maybe a week ago, but I don't think they're too pot bound, so I think they will do fine in here. Now I'm just checking the spacing. I don't have a huge amount of space here. You may just be able to make out roots developing from the lower portion of the stem here, and these will root into the soil, but I don't think it's a good idea with these to set them deep, even though more roots can form from the stem, because they are very prone to rotting around the stem. So I will set that no deeper than it was in the pot, maybe even just slightly higher. And what I can do then is just put a little bit of soil in a mound around the top there, so that soil's not going to sit there being too soggy, because the last thing I want is for these to start to rot here. So that should be fine. That's just a little higher than the surrounding soil. And the soil does seem to stay quite moist here up alongside the wall. Then I will just mound the soil a little bit around the top. That's going to be absolutely fine. I'm going to move this soaker hose back slightly. This soil is plenty damp here. Yeah. I'll put 1 very loose tie here just to stop it flopping down. Quite strong stems on these seedlings. And I can tie that in a little tighter as it goes up here. This is a slightly more developed one. Well, yeah, and the root is rather more developed too. So this has probably gone a little bit too far, but it's not bad actually. That's a nice healthy plant. I'm quite happy with it. Not happy with that. I don't know what that is. Some nasty root. And I will start trimming some of this foliage off, so that won't be getting in the way quite so much. Move this over slightly. Again, just slightly above the soil level there. I'll just mound it up a little bit. Now ideally these would be much further apart, but I can't help that in this situation. I can take these leaves off of this side, it's not a problem. In fact, I might do that. And yeah, that'll be fine. These are only extras, they're not quite so important as the others. No, that's a bad place to put the tie. I'll do the same over here. Yeah, these will just have to put up with being one-sided. I don't think that's a problem. Yeah, a little bit of scorch on that leaf, but it's not bad. I think they should be fine in here. So this variety is Telegraph. It's one of the old greenhouse cucumbers, so I will have to be taking off the male flowers, and there are already male flowers visible here. You can always tell the males from the females because the females have a tiny embryonic fruit behind them. But the male flowers come usually first, and then later on we should get some female flowers. And I will have to take all the males off, because if they pollinate the females, then you end up with bitter cucumbers. So I think nowadays many gardeners have turned to the more modern F1 hybrids, and the hybrid cucumbers are typically an all-female sort, so they will bear few, if any, male flowers, so you don't have to go through that chore of picking out the males. I don't grow many hybrids. As I've mentioned on previous videos, I prefer to grow sort of traditional open pollinated varieties. It's just my choice, so we will have to keep a close eye on those, or we're going to end up with some bad cucumbers. But the other advantage to some of the modern sorts is that the cucumbers are a lot smaller, and Telegraph produces particularly large fruit, so again a lot of people find that a little bit inconvenient, but I like this old variety, and we will put a couple of ridge cucumbers somewhere as well, and they will produce some shorter fruit for us. So here I've got some French beans. This is Beurre de Rocquencourt, and this is a lovely dwarf French bean. It produces long, thin, round, yellow pods, and I really do like the yellow podded sorts. So I set out 3 beans per cell in these really deep cells. These effectively work like root trainers, but they're rigid plastic and they should last a very long time, and I really like the way they produce good strong roots. So most of these cells have 3, some only have 2, but we've had reasonable germination. Now the idea with these is to set these out under cover for the first harvest, and then I will sow the beans for outdoors a little later. Everything's a little bit behind this year, so I'm going to set some out here in the polytunnel, just a few in this little space in the middle, and I will probably pop some in the other greenhouses between the peppers and the tomatoes. I've also got some sweet corn on the way, and I'm going to set some of that out in here. And the plants are still a little bit too small to set out today. I think I'd like to leave them maybe another week, and then I will set out our first sweet corn crop here. Again, I will be sowing more to plant outdoors, and I should be sowing those within a week, so sort of mid-May. And but the crop undercover, that's actually a hybrid. I don't grow many hybrids. I grow one hybrid tomato, the hybrid tomato rootstocks at the moment, and then I grow one hybrid corn. Although this might be the last year I do that, because I'm also growing open pollinated corn as well. Those will go outdoors, but the hybrid corn will be quite fast, and it will grow very quickly under cover. Now, we used to do this in our old polytunnel where we had a lot of space, so there's going to be a little bit compact in here, but I still think I should be able to get a 4x4 block in this space and still just about be able to creep round to the tomatoes. Yeah, it should work. But I think I can plant a few of these French beans in this little space and then the rest in the other greenhouses. These have got wonderful root systems on them now, thanks to those pots. I will set these a little bit deep. Nice. And I think here. I think this soaker hose has only recently come on, so the ground is quite moist here. I don't think I'll need to water these in. Well, I think half a dozen is enough in this little space. I will move on to the other greenhouses. Well, we don't have a huge amount of space here, but this is kind of a little bit wasted, this space here. Now, later on when these plants are bigger, I need to be able to get around here. But I think I might just have enough time to slip in this crop of French beans. And as soon as they've cropped, I can whip those plants out and get rid of them. I will also want to put some basil between the tomato plants later on. The basil plants, well, they're on their way, but they've been a little bit slow at the moment to get going. So they're a few weeks away, I think, before we can plant those out. But if I slip one in at each station here, I will still be able to get between these plants reasonably well in order to tend the tomatoes. The peppers don't really need much work at the moment. So I've set out 8 along this length, and I've got enough plants left to do the same in the other greenhouse. So that one is laid out in exactly the same way as this one. And I'll see how these do. We've never put them in this position. In previous years, these would have gone into our large tunnel, but we lost that during the garden renovations. In fact, we're using the frame as the new fruit cage. So we're having to experiment this year with some slightly different planting arrangements, but I don't see why these wouldn't be okay in here. And they're not going to be here too long. As soon as they've given us their, hopefully, early crop, we'll clear them out of the way. If they do turn out to be a bit of a nuisance, I can always grub them out. So I've just finished this greenhouse in exactly the same way. Here are the basil seedlings I mentioned earlier. Well, they've got their true leaves on now, but growth has been pretty slow on these because of the cool temperatures lately. But as the temperatures are improving, I hope these will start to grow away now. I may even sow a second batch. You can keep basil plants going for quite a long time if you keep pinching them out, and they will grow new side shoots and so on. So I'll think about that and maybe sow another batch, but it looks like it'll be a couple of weeks before these are ready to be planted between the tomatoes. And that's absolutely fine, because I want this basil when I've got ripe tomatoes, and that's not going to be for a while. So the sweet corn seedlings here, they're doing reasonably well. I had pretty good germination. I don't need all of these plants anyway, so there are plenty here. I will pick the strongest 16 I think I can get in there. I don't think there's enough room for 20. I'll have a look when I go to plant them out, but I think a 4x4 block will just about squeeze into the polytunnel. I would like these plants to be a little bigger. The roots are just starting to show at the bottom, but I think they can stay in these cells for another week or two until they're slightly more substantial plants, and then I'll set them out in the polytunnel. Once the sweet corn's in place, we're pretty much done for the undercover space. I will probably lay out some marigolds or something along the borders, and I will think whether there's anything else that we can plant in and around along there. But apart from that, I think the greenhouses and the polytunnel are pretty much there. But anyway, that is all for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and bye for now.